Hi there, I am Richard Ludlow, the CEO of the Ebor Academy Trust. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you there today. Unfortunately, there is a big dump of snow on the Pennines. I hope you have a really successful day, but the purpose of my little introduction is to tell you a little bit about the Ebor Academy Trust and what our involvement with Fcat is. We are a group of 15 schools, soon to be 20 come Easter, across the northeast. We've developed a strategy of locality hubs in 4 particular areas. That's the Humber and East Riding, the Selby, south of York, York Central, and the East Coast, the opportunities area around Scarborough and Filey. Those 4 areas are developing at different rates, but we hope that by 2 or 3 years' time we will have probably 4 hubs of around 2,500 pupils per hub. We're predominantly primary, but we do have 1 secondary in our academy organisation. We really believe firmly that school improvement is at the hub of all that we do. That's how we started in the academy journey. We started by sponsoring another school and immersing ourselves into that transformational process. However, as you grow, you have to create sustainable models. So the first thing I'm going to talk a little bit to you about and show you a few slides is some of our philosophy about school improvement. Now I'd like to talk to you about the Ebor Academy Trust's school improvement strategy. I think there are 3 key elements of this. First of all, we have the accountability element. Those people that are accountable for the outcomes and all the systems within our schools. We have in our trust, obviously, the trustees. Then we have a trustee performance and effectiveness committee, which is made up of experts who are able to understand, analyse data in a greater depth and have an educational background. Then we have the school local governing body committees, of which also scrutinise data and the outcomes for their particular schools, but are given some information from the performance and effectiveness committee. Secondly, we have our systems. This is something I was impressed with the Fcat systems, is that we also have a trust-wide primary data assessment system using OTRAC. We have a system of data capture where every 10th week we capture data and we're able to analyse that data and see the progress that different groups are making. We also have systems for measuring the quality of teaching and learning and identifying where the strengths and areas of development are required. In terms of responsibility, our structure, we have executive leaders of each of our hubs. We have specialist teachers, and we have obviously the head teachers, heads of schools who are responsible within their own schools. There are 3 tiers of support that we have in our trust. The first tier is intervention. And this is key to those schools particularly that have been sponsored. It's targeted support, and we use an immersion system where we immerse ourselves in it with specialist teachers, specialist leaders that are able to rapidly improve those schools. The second tier is the development tier. This is where we organise trust-wide bespoke CPD. We're moving areas of curriculum forward and ensuring that pedagogical shift occurs as we're moving through and developing our curriculums. The third tier is building capacity. This is the one that I'm really keen on because I think this is about building career pathways, talent management, about ensuring that we've got capacity for the future and sustainability. We have 3 core strands of our school-to-school support. The first strand is academy specialists. They are full-time posts in numeracy and literacy. They are specialist teachers that are outstanding practitioners. To ensure that we have core accountability for these people, they are attached to a host school and they're held accountable for their subject outcomes in that school, and they're attached to a vulnerable class within that school. So they're held accountable for the data outcomes of the children in those classes. That is for a period of 20 days a year. They're expected to teach and practice their craft. And for the other days, they are supporting across the Academy Trust. The second strand is specialist system leaders. These are for wellbeing, behaviour and safeguarding, and SEN, communication and language. We have two of these specialist system leaders at present. What we're very keen on is creating sustainability for Strand 1 and Strand 2. So we've created, we call strategy groups, of which they consist of outstanding practitioners in those particular fields. That means that all of those members are able to lead on the strategies across the trust. We have professional learning communities, which are made out of people throughout each of our schools, and they have particular purposes. So for instance, the literacy one, year 6 group, they will be doing moderation, they will be in development work in terms of ensuring that year group is targeted properly. We also have targeted support, because even in our good schools, there are areas which they would like to develop, and they, through their school development plans, have identified those areas that they want to focus on, and we can access the support to do so. I've mentioned the host schools for those system leaders, because it's important that they are embedded in practice, and that's really keen to us, that we have people that really understand what it feels like at the front of a class, what it feels like to be a middle leader, what it feels like to be a senior leader. And obviously CPD is the program that's across the trust where we organise professional development. The third strand of our strands of support are our curriculum specialist leaders. Now, this is an exciting element for us, which we're developing further, and I'll go on to speak about that. Now, our curriculum specialist leaders are outstanding practitioners in particular areas of the curriculum. At the present, we have science and ICT. Those people will have 2 days to develop their curriculum across the trust, to understand what the quality is within our schools, and to support at a high level. But we've also got, we call them curriculum champions. You see in this diagram, we have 4 curriculum champions. These are people that we have applied for the job of being a curriculum champion. They've put expressions of interest. They could be RQTs, people that are really passionate about those particular subjects. They get a funding of £1,500 to their school to release them for 10 days in the year. So when they're released for those 10 days, 4 of those days is to upskill them, to give them in-depth training. So for instance, the science specialists have linked to the National Science Centre and been on a 4-day training course with them. The 6 days are sharing days. And you see here, each curriculum champion will be attached to a school or a class or schools to share their practice. And that depends on the stage of their development. If they're very new to teaching, they might just be attached to a teacher and have just a partner teacher. The idea here is for 6 days during the year, which is 12 half days, they're able to share a network beyond their group. You can see this model is about sharing practice. This is what excites me, because it's quite cost effective, yet it's very high impact in terms of pushing change and development across the trust. We've recently decided to extend this programme to the other subjects, MFL, arts, PE, music, and we're going to add drama to that as well. If you imagine what this means into support. If we have, here we have 6 subject areas. If we have, each of those has 4 curriculum champions, that's 24 champions. If each of those 24 champions has 6 days, that's a lot of support and a lot of development. So we've introduced this in September, and we would like to continue this as we move forward and grow this model. I hope that gives you a real feel and a shape of our curriculum support that we have at different levels through our trust. Thank you. Hi, I hope you enjoyed that. Technology is really interesting nowadays. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the MAT development programme. This was set up by David Carter as a pilot scheme. The idea is that MATs in different regional areas are able to give an oversight, give an overview, a critical eye on what they're doing in terms of their developmental pathway. We are in a system where we are developing at different rates. We all have different challenges, and I think this has been a really interesting opportunity for both our trusts to work collaboratively together. Hi, now I'd like to talk about the MAT development programme. I've called it partnership because I truly believe that this programme is about MATs learning from each other. We had a really good couple of days, myself and my colleagues, Gal Brown and Andrew Robinson, meeting some of your colleagues and staff within Fcat. It was a real pleasure. One of the things we did is identify some key strands. I've called them, for the purpose of this presentation, notable features, things that look as if they're going well. Now, I'm not making a judgment about that because that's up to you two, but there were things that shone out, which I think is worth sharing. The first one was the quality improvement groups. It was really clear that there are systems established for collaborative sharing of good practice across the trust. I really enjoyed the fact that you are looking at developing cross-phase collaboration. I think that's really essential. This concept of year 5 to year 8 excites me in terms of how that can impact on later learning. It was also noted that the leadership of some of these groups has changed, and where they've become really focused, they have a core leader from one of the executive team. In terms of developing that further, we thought that there were some areas that they could develop and work on and move it forward. And for the purpose of our visit, we thought it would be really good if you considered the purpose of each group and also considered what those outcomes of each group were aiming to achieve. Also, we thought that there are times when you need to define whether a QUIG is strategic, or is it intervention, or is it just sharing practice? So it's the purpose again that is really imperative in my mind that would make those groups really effective. The third thing in terms of further investigation in terms of the quality improvement groups was to look at at what point some of these are outcome and impact driven. In other words, is there room for having a quality improvement group which focuses on a core aspect of the curriculum whereby you can benchmark where the data is at the beginning and where it is at the end or midpoints in the year, so it really becomes focused in terms of outcomes. To give you an example, I think we're involved in a reading project at the moment, and we have a group that's looking at that. And in terms of the impact of that group, they've come together, they've shared ideas, but they've gone away with a real understanding that they have to shift some of the data. And I think that's really important with some aspects of quality improvement. The second aspect that we looked at was leadership opportunities. I think this really shone through Fcat. There have been opportunities given to people within the trust through deployments and secondments. I think that was clear. I think that also the investment in professional development through MPQs also came out as a notable feature. And there is also a more transparent process. It sort of almost came across that those initial deployments or secondments were almost happened. And I understand that because sometimes in the nature of an organisation, things have to happen quick. But now there's a bit more of a process and asking for expressions of interest. In terms of moving those leadership opportunities on, we did really enjoy our meeting with the principals of the trust and really felt it was time that maybe they were involved in developing more of the strategic direction of the quality improvement groups and had more opportunities to meet with the executive group, executive principals, in discussing how to shape the trust as it moves forward. We felt it's almost an opportune moment to look at that vast resource that you have and how that can be tapped into in the future. Our third aspect we looked in was the executive leadership. I think that this is a key aspect in terms of capacity in the system and having that core oversight of many schools by a group of people. Having systems of quality assurance were in place, and there was a clear buy-in to the concept of distributive leadership. Again, to further investigate, to develop this and move it forward, I think that one of the anomalies with the executive team is that they are too attached to particular schools and the funding is attached to them. And one of our suggestions was that you consider as a trust whether the executive team should be funded centrally, and therefore there would be more deployment flexibility and it could be more transparent in terms of their roles and responsibilities across the trust as well as within one individual school. Our next point, the fourth point, was the central services. What a cracking group you have there. HR, finance teams, highly regarded, and that was a reason why some schools wanted to join Fcat. There were clarity in budget boundaries with staffing costs, and it was very impressive meeting one of your site team in terms of some of the health and safety systems being developed across the trust. But how can that move forward? One of the things we felt is that it would be useful to examine the services that can be centralised and shared. Is it necessary for every school to replicate some of those services? We also felt that maybe look at to develop the strategic direction of some of the core operations, and standardise some of the generic processes, website templates, admins, be explicit about the admin systems. I think this is really important with GDPR because you can utilise and use that as a vehicle for standardisation across in terms of the admin systems. We did have one aspect of that is about not losing the uniqueness and identity of your organisation. The uniqueness and identity doesn't come through the admin systems. It comes through what you do in the classrooms, what your school stands for, and what curriculum you deliver. The next aspect was governance. Again, in terms of a notable feature of that, we felt the system of governance at all levels was well established. In terms of the expectations and understanding at local governing level and in trustee level, it was very apparent. And there was a strong sense of belonging in terms of the governance. And something that we've learned and we are investigating is that commitment to governance, support and development. One little thing that we felt that would be worth sort of investigating, particularly on trust level, is understanding the risks by all the trustees of all the schools And one of the suggestions that came from one of the trustees was about that distillation of reports. Now, what are the key headlines? We can all talk about our schools, but can we talk about all schools? That would be worth discussing. Lastly, I go on to shared practice. And here I think that this bit, it was apparent again through the quigs, through the group, particularly for sharing teaching and learning and curriculum, and those particular quigs were well regarded. Also, in terms of shared practice, there's a standardized data system, which I think is really useful, particularly with different phases. How to move that forward, though? I think that one of the things that came across was this developing a more shared ethos in terms of classroom level practice. It's very apparent on the leadership level, but classroom practice may be considering the use of experts within the classroom. Further, that's to add to what is already done, and we did have examples of that in terms of science in Key Stage 3. But developing that further and more systematic. Consider how to build a school improvement capacity and how this could be funded by school contribution. And we felt that, and please don't kick me principals if I got this wrong, but we felt the principals all wanted to buy into this sense of a collaborative responsibility for developing the capacity across the trust to share more practice. We've done it within our trust, and we basically, there is a separate pot of money. It's 0.5% of the GAG, which is about funding the shared practice. I mentioned earlier about the curriculum specialist leaders. All that's funded through a collective responsibility of all the schools. Lastly, I think I want to say a big thank you. And hopefully the video is going to pan to me live to say these last important points. As you see, the MAT development programme enabled us to really look at some of the core areas that Fcat are developing, but it was a two-way system. I've come away with 3 areas that I want to look at. One is how we'd support and develop governance. That's something I was really interested in coming to Fcat. The other area was data management across phases, and I want to investigate a little bit further, and I'll be giving you a ring, Tony, to see if I can have a discussion about that. And the third idea, the third thing that I came away with was you have quality improvement groups, which is an overarching umbrella term. Now, we've suggested that maybe you look at the purpose of those groups. I think we had the purpose, but not necessarily the umbrella term that joined them all together. And I would like to develop that approach. 3 things I think came out of our visit, and one of the key things for me, that a trust is about building capacity. If you have capacity within it, you can improve. The second thing was developing talent. And the third thing was collaboration with responsibility. And I felt those 3 things resonated with me with Fcat and mirrored EBOR. If you can't collaborate with responsibility, why be in a trust? And I think that that really is the cornerstone of what you stand for. Have a great day. I hope you have a very successful time shaping how you move forward in the future, and I hope to work with you again soon.